Today we're discussing multiplying and dividing rational numbers. This is part one, so we'll just do multiplying fractions. A couple ideas to review. To multiply numbers, we're going to use the same rules that we did for our signs with integers. The product of two rational numbers with the same sign is positive. So a positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a negative is also a positive. The product of two rational numbers with different signs, though, is negative. So a negative times a positive is a negative. Remember that we have this chart here to help us keep track of all of our signs. Let's try two examples together. So example one right there says negative 4/11 times 3/8. Our first step, just like with adding fractions, was to take the negative and keep it with the numerator. So this is negative 4/11 times 3/8. Now when we're multiplying fractions, reminder that we multiply numerators and then we multiply the denominators. We can also take a step to simplify it earlier on. So right here I know that 4 and 8 have a common factor of 4. Negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. The reason we do this is it makes our next multiplication step a little bit simpler and we don't have to simplify at the end. Negative 1 times 3 is 3, or negative 3, sorry. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. 11 times 2 is 22. So my final answer there is negative 3/22. If we didn't do that simplification step, we'd have to take one more step here and divide numerator and denominator by 4. Example 2 is slightly different. We have two negatives and we also have mixed numbers, not improper fractions. So let's go ahead and first change our mixed numbers to improper fractions. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So one thing to notice that I did there is I know at the end that this answer is going to be negative. So we can add our negative at the end rather than thinking 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. We can just remember that it will be negative in the end. Same happens here. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I know that this is negative 7/3. In this case, our first step, again, let's look for any common factors. We don't have any here, or no common factors of 25 and 7 that we could find in 6 and 3. We multiply our denominators first here. We have 6 times 3 is 18. Our numerator, we have negative 25 times negative 7. So I first know that a negative times a negative will give me a product of a positive. If I have 25 times 7, easiest way to think about all of our 25s is in terms of quarters. So if I have 7 quarters right here, then I know that I have 175 cents. So I know my final answer is 175/18. I'm going to leave this answer like this. What I want you all to do is try writing this instead of an improper fraction as a mixed number. Let's try more examples together. So just like with adding and subtracting, we can do 2 steps, but we can also do 3 steps too. We just have to remember to keep with our order of operations. One thing that's not always included in order of operations are the absolute values. We'll keep absolute values just like a parentheses, so they'll be our first step there. So before I take the absolute value, like parentheses, let's do what's on the inside of the absolute values. So our first step here will be to say 4/5 times negative 7. Now I know that 4/5 times negative 7 is just like 4/5 times negative 7/1. I put the sign with the numerator so that I could do this multiplication a little bit easier. So right here I have 4 times negative 7, that's negative 28. 5 times 1, that's 5. Now this is all still within the absolute value, and then we're going to multiply it by a negative 1/7. So I first have to take the absolute value of negative 28/5. The absolute value of negative 28/5, well, that number is 28/5 away from 0. So my answer there would be 28/5. Now if we're going to go through and multiply this now, again, I'm going to simplify before I multiply. 28 and 7 have a common factor of 7. 28 divided by 7 is 4. 7 divided by 7 is 1. Now this makes my multiplication, again, a little bit easier. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. 1 times 5 is positive 5. My final answer is negative 4 over 5. In this case, I kept the negative, again, with the numerator. So negative 1/7 with negative 1 over 7. Let's try a word problem together. This word problem says a 14.5 gallon tank of gasoline is 3/4 of the way full. How many gallons will it take to fill? So I know that I can have 14.5 gallons, but it's only 3/4 full. So a summary statement would be I have 3/4 of my 14.5 gallons. Of means multiplication, so I have 3/4 times 14.5. I have a fraction and a mixed number. Let's change our mixed number to an improper fraction so we can multiply. I have 3 over 4 times 14 times 2 is 28, plus 1 is 29. I have 3 times 29 over 4 times 2. My denominator, 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 29, well, I can break this up, and I know that 3 times 9, 27. 3 times 2 is 6. So 29 times 3 is 87 over 8 gallons. Again, you all will take one more step here and make the improper fraction a mixed number. So this 2.4 video notes just covered multiplying fractions.